For the greater good. That's the topic of today's county seat. Hi, I'm Chad Booth. When you look out your back window across your backyard, you would normally expect to see a fence and your neighbor's yard. And you would expect that if you were to go in your backyard, there would be tranquility. But what happens one day when you walk out the back door and you find a set of train tracks on the other side of your fence? Or somebody is constructing a pump jack to pump oil out of the ground, or they're starting to excavate a gravel pit. Well, those are real concerns, and they do occur. And that's why we have planning and zoning in the counties, so that we can plan for a community and group property types together in ways that make sense. How does that process work? Well, that's where we'll get started by this report from Dan Pope.
I'm here in a vacant lot in a neighborhood where you can see houses all around me. And for the adjacent landowners, they probably don't want a power station or some kind of industrial complex moving in. That is what land use planning is all about.
Anyone who has ever tried to build a home or a business on a vacant parcel of land is likely familiar with zoning and land use planning.
Land use planning is basically the process that the local government uses to try to predict and encourage a development pattern that is the consensus of the elected leaders. So it includes a list of uses that are allowed and uses that are not allowed, and it tries to manage the development of property and make sure that values are preserved and uses are predictable. When done well, it will raise the value of all property. Industrial property will be worth more because it doesn't have to compete with residential property next door for noise issues or things that make residents unhappy. And residential properties are worth more because they're near other residential properties and people can enjoy the quiet and peace of a residential neighborhood.
It has been 86 years since the U.S. Supreme Court ratified zoning for developing communities. These land use plans provide for things like health, general welfare, safety, and transportation. When a new community is developed, leaders and citizens come together to decide how they want the new area zoned, keeping some parcels for residential, others commercial, and some industrial. It all sounds pretty simple, but as communities evolve, so do their land use issues.
The biggest problem is, number one, keeping up with the changing economy. Right now we have foreclosed properties, we have vacant homes owned by the banks, we have a real problem with builders not being able to generate the kind of sales they're interested in. At the same time, we have population growth. We have more than one family living together in a house, sometimes intergenerational. When the housing market fell, now 2 or 3 years later, it's a whole new ballgame.
Not in my backyard or NIMBYs are when projects that are planned for a particular neighborhood are opposed. But when proper execution of planning happens, communities will be aware of projects like this power pole or power lines that will pass through a particular neighborhood.
On the other hand, there are some residents who don't like the zoning game at all and believe as a property owner, you have the right to do whatever you want with a property, but in land planning, it turns out you can't have both.
I really haven't ever talked to someone who said we shouldn't have some kind of land use control. I mean, somebody might say that it's uniformly bad, and then I'll start telling them, okay, what should we have next door to you? And they'll say, well, I don't want a sexually oriented business, or I don't want a railway depot. Or the definition of somebody who really believes in property rights is someone not who wants to do anything they want on their property, but who's willing to let the neighbor do anything he wants on his property.
Arguments against zoning still aren't the largest issue. Like many things in a democracy, citizen apathy can do a lot of damage.
The biggest problem we face is that people want to get involved in the zoning business after the decisions are made, when somebody wants a permit for an approval or to get a subdivision. And by and large, by the time somebody comes in for an application to develop, the decisions are already made, and we miss being part of those decisions. We need to be involved when the ordinance is written and when the general plan is written.
Community involvement in the early stages of development can bring great benefits to the neighborhood, especially when everyone involved in the process is aware of what will be developing in the near future. For the county seat, I'm Dan Pope.
Thank you, Dan. We will look forward to discussing a little bit more about the problems with planning and zoning and what people want to, or try to, or not have their neighbors do with their property when we continue with the county seat. We'll be back in just a minute.
At the Prehistoric Museum, USU Eastern, there's no time like the past. Interpretive exhibits tell a tale of long ago. Observation labs allow visitors to witness the processes of preparation and curation and speak one-on-one with the preparators. Dinosaurs, Ice Age, and archaeology allow you to experience life 500 million years in the making. What happens in Utah's Castle Country stays with you.
The State of Utah School and Institutional Trust Lands Administration. SITLA manages 3.5 million acres of Utah lands with the express purpose of furthering the education of Utah students while promoting local industry, oil and gas, even residential development, all at the same time. Through the careful use of trust lands, we distributed more than $22 million to Utah schools last year. The State of Utah School and Institutional Trust Lands Administration, building the state's permanent school fund.
Cedar City, Utah is home of the Tony Award-winning Utah Shakespeare Festival. But did you know that we also offer a different kind of play?
Almost 45% of the oil produced in Utah, 7.8 million barrels, comes from Duchesne County. That oil feeds our state economy, provides job growth, and supports local business. Here in Duchesne County, we're working to make Utah an economic, cultural, and technological leader. Whether you're here for business or pleasure, Duchesne County will welcome you with open arms and invite you to explore all the beauty of the Uinta Mountains. Duchesne County, close enough for business, far enough to get away.